Well, you probably heard the saying, babies don't come with instruction manuals.
And boy, is that true, especially when it comes to feeding. Pediatrician Dr. Jennifer Gardner is here, joining us with some interesting statistics about parents' preparedness when they leave the hospital, or should we say lack thereof, after delivery.
That's
Welcome,
right.
doctor. I remember thinking, like, really? We just get to go home?
Do you think there should be some kind of license to be a parent?
That's up for someone else to decide. No, I think all parents can be great parents.
All right, there's no, and this is not a pun intended, but is there a certain formula for raising a child? Is there one cookie cutter mold that we should all be going after?
Wow, I think if there were, we'd probably all want to know what it is. And unfortunately, there's no one perfect formula for raising healthy kids, because kids are unique. And you know, if it were as easy as a math problem where you could follow logical steps to the right answer, and if I could tell you those answers, I'd be a real happy doctor right now.
Exactly.
But no, there's no one formula.
Okay.
You know, well, and speaking of formula, feeding, breastfeeding,
Yeah.
formula, that's usually one of the biggest debates, challenges for new parents. What's your view on feeding, at least to get people started?
Okay, well, I think that's a great question, and it really starts in the, before the baby's born. If I have the opportunity to talk with parents before the baby comes, I always tell them that they should think about a feeding plan, which includes just knowing what you want to do, but also knowing the options. So I always tell them that breastfeeding is best. It's perfect food and it's what nature intended. And so if a parent tells, if mom tells me they're going to breastfeed, I'm thrilled. But I also say, just look at your options, make sure you understand the basics of formula feeding, because in my own case, as a pediatrician, I was fully intending on breastfeeding my son exclusively, and an emergency C-section made that a difficult proposition, and I was asked early on in the nursery if I would supplement with formula. And as a pediatrician, I know that formula is a great second feeding option, and so I had no hesitation. But a lot of parents that haven't thought about it actually stumble on that question, and it's really not a good thing when you have a hungry baby waiting for that answer. So definitely prepare in advance.
A lot of people don't feel prepared when they leave that hospital. Are there is there like a top 10 list of things that we can go to that says this is what you should know before you leave with this new baby?
It's true. 1 in 5 moms didn't feel prepared to feed with formula when they left the hospital. And that tells me that we as clinicians and as workers for babies need to do a better job educating our moms, and storebrandformula.com wants to be that trusted resource, especially for moms that are going to go home and formula feed. Surprisingly, more moms leave the hospital feeling prepared to breastfeed than formula feed. And while that's great, I want to see all moms breastfeeding, I don't want parents that go home and formula feed to not know how to do it. So one place they can go is storebrandformula.com, and they can download an ebook that's being released today on formula feeding. And on that website, they're also going to find parenting advice, tips and tricks, engaging videos, and just lots of good information.
You know, that's so much of it is figuring out your kid. I remember one of my favorite books was The Secrets of the Baby Whisperer, which had at least a little bit of an idea of how to read your baby and figure out when to feed them. Do you have any tips for that? Because parents, obviously, they don't want the middle of the night feedings because they want to sleep.
Right. I absolutely do have tips for it. And, one of the most important things to do is to listen to your baby. And, as you're in the first few weeks of life, you're getting to know your baby and your baby's getting to know you. You want to feed when the baby's hungry, and you want to stop when the baby's full. And this has has a lot of implications going forward. So if you can learn to trust your baby and only feed when they're hungry, then you're going to be ahead of the game. One of the tips I give for parents to tell if their baby's hungry is to look for these clues. The first one is the baby usually becomes a lot more alert when they're getting ready to feed. And they might start sucking on their thumb or making lip-smacking motions with their mouth. They also sometimes put their hands in their mouth. And they might start to root, which means turning towards the bottle or the breast. If you see that, it means go ahead and feed your baby. On the other hand, you want to stop when the baby's full. And the clues that tell you that your baby's ready to stop feeding is they just become less interested with feeds. They start to turn away from the bottle or the breast. They might get tired or sleepy or yawn. All those are signals that you don't want to keep feeding because you risk overfeeding and overriding those start and stop signals that your baby's born with.
Often we see these little, really big, plump babies. Is there such a thing as too heavy for a baby?
Absolutely, babies will overfeed. You see this more with formula-fed babies than breastfed babies. And the reason is really just misinformation with the parents, that sometimes babies just like to suck a lot. And so instead of offering a bottle, you might want to try a pacifier or just picking the baby up and soothing them that way. So yes, babies can be overfed, and that's something you really want to talk to with your doctor. They'll look at the growth curve and they want to see a smooth growing along the growth curve and not crossing percentiles.
Well, doctor, as soon as I have a baby, I'm calling you.
Great, Scott.
You might get a pass on that one, doctor. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Gardner runs what she calls an online child wellness and pediatric weight management program. And to learn more about it, you can head to healthykidscompany.com.